I would say that electrical engineering, which is where I got my own bachelor's degree, actually has hardly moved. The percentage of women in electrical engineering isn't much different than when I was in school in the 80s. So clearly we have some work to do. So the BIO5 Institute is really invested in promoting women in STEM, not only encouraging them to get started with training and to enter that career, but also supporting our faculty, our members, our staff, all the people who are in the field right now to persist and to help others. We have amazing women who are associated with the BIO5 Institute, and we have a wonderful panel for you here today. And I'm super excited. I hope that will encourage and motivate all of you, whether you are women or whether you are an ally of women, to create this wonderful, diverse workforce that we need. So with that, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. Courtney Williams is co-founder and CEO of Imagine Solutions Technology. Imagine is tackling the U.S. maternal health crisis with remote patient monitoring and pregnancy care. The company is increasing communication between patient and doctor and providing access to handheld ultrasound. It's really an incredibly cool technology. Imagine is an award-winning startup, including second prize in Farrell Williams Black Ambition Award, Department of Health and Human Services Hypertension Challenge, Roddenberry Foundation Catalyst Award, Flynn Foundation Bioscience Entrepreneurship Award, and the Arizona Innovation Challenge grant. Courtney is a marketing graduate from the University of Arizona and received her MBA from Thunderbird School of Global Management. She has 12 years of experience in customer analytics in Fortune 500 companies and international business experience in Africa and Latin America. For 5 years, she served on the board of Open Windows Foundation in Guatemala. So please join me in welcoming Courtney.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and for spending part of your weekend together to talk about such an important subject, would be women in STEM. I just want to make sure before I get going that everybody can hear me okay. Perfect. Awesome. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I've got a PowerPoint for you today, and at the end, you'll have my contact information if you have any follow-up questions. Let's see if this one will, let's see here. As it's on. It might not reach over there. All right, next slide. Thank you. So I am Courtney Williams. I'm co-founder and CEO of Imagine Solutions Technology, and we are your companion for a safe pregnancy. Next slide. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about our story, like how I got into STEM, some of the challenges that we have faced and how we've tackled them to this point, and also just advice that I can provide and some thoughts and guidance that I can share with you that having learned along my journey. So here we go. Next slide. So this is my dad, Larry Williams, and he is the first person who got into STEM in our family. He was a graduate of University of Arizona, and he went after biology as his major. And he also played for the University of Arizona football team. And so he was the first person in our family to go to college and also to be involved in science. And he has just been the person that we've all kind of looked to understand more about the field. Now, next slide. I didn't really get into STEM until family experience, to be honest. So I went to University of Arizona and I studied marketing, and I went through the Eller program, and I decided to go the business route. But then I started noticing that my family members were having difficult pregnancies. So my sister, for example, she had a really difficult pregnancy, and it opened my eyes up to the fact that maternal health is not really safe in America. And then, next slide, fast forward to the pandemic. In the height of the pandemic, I actually had my own high-risk pregnancy. And about a week after giving birth, I started getting chest pain, and I had this awful headache that wouldn't go away. My legs were really swelling up. And I talked about it with my family. I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is this? And my mom's like, this is a potential emergency. Go to the hospital right away. And I actually ended up getting, it was preeclampsia that I got in the postpartum period. And it turns out that my case turned out okay. I got help in time, but I was really frustrated because all this technology that we have today, it wasn't applied to my maternal health journey. The same technology that could help heart failure patients and that could help people suffering from kidney failure could have helped me in my maternal health journey and so many others if we had had a way, instead of going into the doctor's office to track my blood pressure, doing that at home and reporting that to my doctor. So next slide. Is it working? Let's try one more time. There we go. So what I realized going through that process that actually I am not alone, and the US is in a maternal health crisis. And in fact, the numbers are actually getting worse. We're currently the most dangerous and expensive place in the developed world to give birth. And this is actually even worse for Black and Indigenous women who die at 2 to 3 times the rate of their other ethnic counterparts. So this is something that is affecting all of us. And this is one of the reasons why I am in STEM. To give you some visuals on this, I know that we have talked about this, and I'm sure for those of you that are currently, learning about in healthcare fields, you're learning about this, but it bears repeating again. This is where we were in 2015 compared to our developed world counterparts in terms of maternal mortality. And here's where we were most recently with the most recent data. It's getting worse. So, and this is happening right here in our own backyard. Arizona is actually in the top 10 for worst maternal health outcomes in the United States. So this is something that affects our entire community and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future until we start taking action, multiple levels, including technology, to address this. So one of the things that I mentioned was preeclampsia, and this is something that affected me. And I wasn't really aware of this condition until I experienced it myself. But this is actually one of the cost drivers for maternal health in our country. It's also one of the drivers for the high death rate, because this is a condition that can come up really quickly, especially if people are not aware of it. And like Tori Bowie, this affected her very recently. So preeclampsia affects 1 in 20 women right now, and it's a major cost driver. It adds like $30,000 to the cost of already some of the most expensive maternal health care in the world. In addition, we've got gestational diabetes, which affects 1 in every 10 women. And half of the people that get that condition go on to develop diabetes that they have to deal with lifelong. So maternal health conditions, these are kind of like the 2 drivers of this maternal crisis that we have, and they're both increasing. So we're like, how can we address this? And we're doing that at our startup in our small way. So we are your companion for a safe pregnancy. We're developing technology to make pregnancy care safer, to make it lower cost by recognizing things earlier and be able to take action sooner, and hopefully improving maternal health outcomes. So there are 3 technologies that we're working on right here at the University of Arizona Center for Innovation, which is part of the UA Tech Park. And the first one is our maternal health app. I developed this out of my own personal experience going through getting preeclampsia in the postpartum period. And this is where patients can log and track their maternal health from their blood pressure, their blood glucose, their symptoms, their vitals. They can do that all here in the app. And then they can communicate that to their provider if their provider has our remote patient monitoring software, the Journey Clinic. And of course, there's AI that enables a lot of this, and we're developing that out further. But the important part is that this gives doctors a window into how their patients are doing when they're not in the office. And this is something that is not the current standard of care, believe it or not, right now in 2023. In addition, another technology that we developed was our VistaScan handheld ultrasound. And this is an FDA-cleared technology. It's a quick look ultrasound that providers can use at the bedside, the patient's home and an ambulance or anywhere in between, in order to get an idea of what's going on with amniotic fluid levels, fetal cardiac activity, and fetal placement. So we have developing out all of these technologies. We've actually had a number of different challenges along the way, as you can imagine. So first of all, funding. So being a woman in STEM, being anybody in STEM, one of the biggest drivers is you've got to fund the innovations that you're working on in order to be able to keep progressing. And funding has been a big challenge for us because, well, many reasons. Number one, there aren't a lot of women getting VC dollars, venture capital dollars. So that's still an area, especially for women of color, it's even worse. So that's still an area where it can be really difficult to break in and get your innovations funded. So one of the ways that we have worked around that is by going after non-dilutive funding. We are going after grants, and that has actually been one of our best ways to like fuel ourselves forward. So I'll tell you a little bit about some of the grants that we applied for in a few minutes to kind of provide inspiration for any of you that are potentially looking to develop innovations and want to find creative sources of funding to do that. Another challenge that we have experienced is we're a very small entity. As I mentioned, we're in Tucson, we're not like in Silicon Valley, and we want to grow our STEM company, but sometimes it can be really hard to do that as a female entrepreneur. Sometimes just, real talk, not everybody has a network. Also, if you aren't necessarily from that field, it can be pretty difficult to develop your network. And that's been something that's been a challenge for me. I come from the business side, and I didn't have a lot of bio contacts when I started. So we've grown through partnerships, and that it established trust that has enabled us to expand our network. That's been able to us to expand our reach for our products and our growth. So federally qualified health centers that we partner with, both in California and New Mexico and like further beyond. Withings is one of our partners. So we're going after companies as well that are kind of in similar spaces. Withings makes blood pressure monitors and smartwatches and scales. So these are the products that our customers need in order to be able to measure their pregnancy vitals. So they can do that with the Withings devices and also integrate that into our app and into our remote patient monitoring system. We're also like having to integrate into EHR systems so that we can expand our technology further and expand the use of that. So partnering with systems such as Epic is helping us to do that. And then the third kind of challenge that we've had is, so if you are a STEM entrepreneur, or if you are somebody that's new in the field, or, you're a startup, any of these confluences of factors can make it difficult for you to have credibility and for people to want to use your products. And so one of the best ways that we've found to kind of innovate around that is to do pilots. We have done so many pilots. We especially started that with our handheld ultrasound. We weren't an established name at all. We still aren't. We're still small and growing. And being able to partner to do pilots has really helped us get great feedback, understand usability, improve our products and do that while gathering data and, increasing our network along the way and be able to grow our company. So we just released our patient app this year, and it's called the Journey Pregnancy, and in January. And so far, it's actually, we haven't done any marketing for it, but it's starting to grow. Over 40% of our patients that use our technology report actually feeling safer in their pregnancy. So we know that we're onto something, and we want to grow that. We want to get this technology into more people's hands across the nation. The app is growing. We have a user base of about 1,500 first, second, third trimester patients right now, and we're looking to grow that even more. And then this is something that's available not just in Arizona, but we're partnering with different organizations outside of our state to be able to sort of expand our efforts. So my advice to you in this is, if you want to go down a similar path and create your own STEM company or lead innovation, whether you're in an institution or elsewhere, having a vision has been central for us. We are in love with the problem of maternal health. We are in love with the idea that there is innovation that we can apply to making maternal health safer and improving outcomes. We're not in love with our products. We're in love with the problem. And that has actually enabled us to find different types of opportunities to apply for. There's some grants that we applied for, like the Flynn Foundation, that we did not get on the first time. It took us 3 times to apply for this grant. So my advice is be persistent, and having that exposure each time you apply for something actually is incredibly helpful. You go back, you get feedback as to why your application didn't go through this time. You maintain and develop these relationships. And then when you continue to apply down the line, that can be really, really helpful. And that leads to success. Same thing with I-Corps. That is a program that's available to folks at U of A, to folks at UACI. It's an amazing program to learn how to apply the scientific method to customer discovery. We've been through it 4 times in our startup, and it has been so helpful each time. So that's another example. We were just awarded a phase 1 National Science Foundation SBIR award, and we're in the running for a phase 2. And I would say that these small business innovation research grants have been instrumental in helping us to grow. Be flexible, times change, things change. So being flexible will help you expand your technology and open your eyes up to new opportunities. And my last piece of advice is surround yourself with people that are so smart in many different areas. And that's what we've done. Whether it's regulatory, whether it's biomedical engineering, whether it's software engineering, whether it's data science, we've amassed a really interesting, different, diverse in every way team that's helped us to grow. And I've found a lot of my team members by connecting, by going to events like this and by connecting on LinkedIn. You'll be surprised by how people are so open to connect and that you can get a lot of great expertise just by reaching out. And that's what I highly recommend to everybody. And here are ways that you guys can connect with us. I'd love to follow you all and love to have you along on our journey as well. We are Imagine Solutions Technology. I'm Courtney Williams. We're developing technology to make maternal health care safer and improve outcomes. I thank you so much for being a part of the STEM community, and thank you for inviting me here today.
Thank you, Courtney. That was amazing. All right, my name is Jessie Allen. I am the BIO5 Director of Communications and Marketing, and I am 2 months into the job. I am honored to be your moderator today. The BIO5 sets equal focus on cutting-edge STEM research, discovery, innovation, and is paired with a mission to engage and inspire students. So it's wonderful to see so many of you out in the audience today, and I know we have a great group online, so thank you for joining us today. I would also like to thank our sponsor for today's panel, David Klein of Scientist Solutions. For those of you that are here in person, he sponsored the EG's lunch today. So thank you so much, David. And he will have upcoming vendor shows at the BIO5 Institute on September 15th and December 8th for those of you that would like to come. So when Amy asked me to moderate this panel, I got to thinking, am I a woman in STEM? Sure, I don't have the scientist or researcher background, but the last 10 years of my career have been telling the stories of engineers working on major projects, and now telling the story of the BIO5 Institute, working alongside amazing women and telling their stories. So I'll say, yes, I'm a woman in STEM, and I'm so proud of that. And I think one of the reasons why I wanted to join the BIO5 Institute is to help tell the stories of all of the amazing projects that all of you are working on or will work on. It's opportunities like today's event that also allow us to hear from women in all paths of their lives and discuss their journeys in STEM. And I urge you all here today, both in person and online, to take advantage of this great panel, ask questions, engage, and network at the end. We'll start with an introduction of our panelists, and at the end, we'll open the floor for questions. We'll take questions both here live in the audience, and we will also take questions through the chat function on Zoom. So let's go ahead and get started with 1-minute introductions from everyone, and we'll start with Dr. Felicia Goodrum.
Hey everyone, thanks for being here.
Okay, now? Okay, I'm Felicia Goodrum. I'm a scientist in the BIO5 Institute in the Department of Immunobiology here. I'm a virologist by training, and I study human viruses, specifically a virus called cytomegalovirus, which is a massive problem for maternal fetal health, otherwise known as CMV, but it's the leading cause of congenital anomalies. And so we study that virus to understand how it persists in the population, because over 60 to 99% of the world's population is infected with this virus. And once you're infected, you have it for life. In addition to my role as a scientist leading a lab in the BIO5 Institute with about 12 staff members, undergraduates, graduate students, and postdocs, I also really love leadership within my field, being the president for the American Society for Virology a year ago, and the current editor-in-chief of the Journal of Virology. And so that's me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Pilch. I currently work at the BIO5 Institute in their Keys Research Internship. I am colloquially the science literacy instructor. My official title is outreach instructional assistant, but my job is to go through and teach the students the skills that they need to learn in order to communicate their science effectively. But I also have 2 degrees in molecular and cellular biology and microbiology. So I'm very happy to be here today.
Hi, I'm Jody Nyboer. I'm the PI for the media facility. And you're probably asking, what does a woman in STEM do in a media facility? And it's not what you think. What we do is we create buffers and reagents and microbiological plates and broths and cell culture media and Drosophila food for researchers here in BIO5 and across the campus. I've been here roughly 5 years, and I really enjoy my experience here. My background was I worked in the private sector for many years doing basic and applied research. And I always was interested in an academic career, so I'm really happy that I've had this opportunity to have this experience.
Hi, I am Lindsey Taha, and I am a recent University of Arizona grad this past May. I studied neuroscience and cognitive science with a double minor in business and Spanish. And I was also a part of BIO5 at my time, or during my time as an undergrad. I participated in the BIO5 Ambassadors Internship, and I was a part-time staff member for the BIO5 Public Affairs team. So I'm happy to be here.
Great. So now we'll go through some questions and then we will get to audience questions. We definitely want to give you enough time to pick the brains of all these amazing women. Dr. Goodrum, let's start with you. At any point in your education or career, did you ever want to change the direction of your path? If so, what were some of those intimidation factors that maybe could have kept you out of STEM, and how did you overcome those?
And that's a great question. And I think all of us have a story around. So during my training, when I was a postdoc at Princeton University, I was working in a large lab with about 25 other postdocs and graduate students. And I was pregnant with my second child and very unexpectedly became a single mother with a 1-year-old and an unborn child. And that was a time where I really had to think about what I was doing, because I was on this accelerated path to becoming a faculty member, which was this really demanding, daunting job. And, I was in a very supportive atmosphere and was told, stay here as long as you want, but of course you can't be a postdoc forever. And so eventually decided that it was time for me to start looking for positions, and really not knowing if I could do this and also care for my 2 children. And so I came to the University of Arizona. Late in the game, I was already about to accept a position at Tufts Medical School in Boston. Came here and met with Vicki Chandler, who was the director of BIO5 at the time. And we sat and had lunch at the Arizona Inn. And I just really honestly said, I don't know if I can do this. I'm a single mother and I have these 2 infants. I really don't know if I can do this. And she just looked at me and she said, of course you can. And then we began to talk, and she became this most incredible mentor. And it was just, that's I think a really key point to getting over these barriers that you foresee, is having someone that can support you and mentor you through that. And so that was critical. And not, having the perseverance to at least just try. And so those, I think, that was the biggest, I think, point of possibly changing paths.
Thank you. Jody, have you experienced gender bias in your field? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I experienced gender bias in my field. I'm an older person, as you can tell, an older scientist. And when I started my scientific career, 10% of women were scientists. So it was 90% men. And it was extremely difficult because you were treated as a second-class citizen. Sexual harassment was horrendous. I used to travel for my position, and I would go home to the hotel room and I literally would cry because I was tormented so much. And I kept a brave face during the day because I had to. I didn't want them to see me sweat. You know what I mean? And so finally, as time went on and I became more confident in myself, I approached a human resource person. And at that time, I was a single parent too. And I knew I wasn't getting any child support. I knew I had to support myself and my young son. And I finally said to them, you know what? I'm just as good as anybody else. I'm here to earn a living, and why shouldn't I earn the best living that I can? And that's how I felt from this point forward, is that, you know what? You have to do what you have to do, and it's okay. And you have to persevere sometimes. Is it difficult? Yes. Are you going to cry? Yes. But perseverance is what gets you through.
Thank you. I think some of the things that every speaker has said this morning for the women in the group is you can do it if you're a mom. I'm a mom of 2 young kids too, and it's really hard, but you can do it. And there's a misconception that moms sometimes can't do the full-time job, the full-time school, the full-time, being a researcher or a scientist. And let me tell you, you can do it all. So we'll get over to Jordan. What are some of the unique struggles and opportunities you've experienced as a young woman in STEM?
So as stated, I am one of the younger ones. I graduated with my bachelor's degrees last year, and I've only been working full-time in my position for a year since then. But I have a lot of experience with being a woman in STEM. So I'm going to start off with some of the challenges that I have faced, and most of them have been in classes. My 2 degrees are both in biological fields, life science fields, which are 56% women. Yay, I've reached it in those fields. That's awesome. But I also have a minor in mathematics, and I was in my linear algebra class the only female presenting student there. And it was really tough because I felt as though I couldn't connect with my male peers in that class. Or if I did, it was kind of with a tone of, you're the only girl here. You kind of need some more help in this field. You need to be doing this. Despite the fact that I was still doing very well in the class, I still ended up getting an A in it. And so it was very much in those kinds of classes that I felt very isolated and like I didn't have another peer there. Thankfully, my best friend ended up deciding I'm not just going to do a minor in math, I'm going to full on major in it. So it was really awesome to go through and work with her in those classes and to experience times where we could bond over our love of math. As for opportunities, I have written 2 literature reviews on near peer mentorship in STEM and the effects that it can have with retention in those fields. And by being somebody who is female presenting within this field, I have definitely gotten the chance to mentor students like the wonderful Keys interns that I can see sitting in the back, like the wonderful ambassadors. Lindsey was an ambassador when I was the co-facilitator. And I have gotten the chance to be mentored by wonderful women, such as Dr. Barton, such as my boss, Kelly Hyland, such as Amy, who is sitting in the back as well. And those connections that I've gotten have been the best opportunities for being a woman in STEM.
Now to Lindsey. As a recent 2023 grad on the panel today, can you talk about the path that led you to become a STEM undergraduate at the U of A? And what are you doing now in your career?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's important to understand kind of how my path to becoming an undergraduate female in STEM. So I've always had a passion for science, and it started when I was in middle school. I was taking advanced placement science courses that really facilitated my passion for learning about science. Those advanced placement courses continued up into my high school career, and that's what inspired my initial goal of attending medical school. So I had this goal in mind when I started my career at U of A, and that was really pivotal in my choice of major. So as I mentioned, I majored in neuroscience and cognitive science, which is also a pre-med track. So I've always had a special interest in the brain specifically also because of how complex it is and just because how much we still have left to discover about it. So it was kind of around my sophomore year that I decided I no longer wanted to pursue medical school. However, I was still really interested in the brain and I was really enjoying the classes I was taking within my major. So I chose to stay in the major, and that's when I kind of transitioned more into the cognitive science side, which is the behaviors rather than the actual anatomy of the brain. So that track is kind of less pre-med, although I did still take a lot of those pre-med courses. So I was initially interested in research after I've shifted my focus from no longer going to medical school. And that's when I found BIO5. And as I mentioned, I participated in the BIO5 Ambassadors internship. my junior year. And that internship led to a part-time position where I didn't get to directly participate in research, but I got to observe and learn and work with a lot of the amazing staff members, a lot of which are female, and the researchers in BIO5. So I then discovered that I had a huge passion still for medicine and for being in the operating room. So that's when I discovered medical sales, and that was kind of towards my junior year in college. So I decided to focus in on that, and that's what I wanted to do in my career. So currently, I am working to pursue a career in medical sales. I have this opportunity with TZ Medical, and I am participating in their internship/training program beginning at the end of July in Portland, Oregon. So I will spend 4 months in Portland, where I'll be learning the ins and outs of the sales process, the medical products that TZ offers, and learning how to be a medical sales representative. So after that internship, I will then move to a territory where I will become a full-time medical sales rep. So I'm really excited to jumpstart my career with TZ Medical and to get to be a part of a company that really strives to improve patient outcomes.
Thank you. So before we turn it over to our Q&A session, we're going to go back to every panelist and have you share a piece of advice for inspiring women to either get into STEM or to remain in STEM. And you'll each have 3 minutes. So you want to start with you, Dr. Goodrum?
Great. So as Dr. Barton said early on, it's really important that we have diverse perspectives. And I think women bring amazing things to science. Women make amazing mentors. And what I really love about being a woman in science is the diversity of the job. Every day is new and exciting. Every day is different. I absolutely love the group that I work with. I love building that team. And I love the colleagues and the collaborations I have. I love collaborative science. You bring this collective brain to a particular problem where, any one piece of that collective brain couldn't answer the questions to the same extent as bringing a lot of people together. And so science offers so many opportunities to tackle really big fundamental questions, to understand more about the natural world, human biology, whatever it is that you're interested in, that it's the most exciting thing I've done with my life. I mean, it's just this gift that keeps on giving.
I always wanted to be a scientist from very young on. And I went to school and I took the classes and I went to university. And then I worked in the field of research. And what I found was perseverance was so important. If you love what you do, it's easy. And I once said to one of my bosses, I said, I could do this and not be paid. It's like a hobby. And when you enjoy something that much, you can do what it takes, because being in science is difficult. It's a hard major, whatever you choose, math, engineering, whatever. But when you love it, and I still love it, I still love science, even after being in the field for many years, let's put it that way. I've really enjoyed it. And what I would say is persevere. And you know what? If you start doubting yourself, you never know unless you try. So keep trying, because many times you'll succeed.
I have kind of a unique history. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was a year and a half old, and have had to both exist in a field that is not necessarily the most welcoming and friendly to those that are female presenting, as well as having an invisible disability where I'm like, hey guys, I can't come today because my pancreas has decided to try to kill me. And so I feel as though having many things going on in your life, especially as somebody who's a woman in STEM, you're going to have a million things that are going to be demanding your attention, that you're going to have to juggle and keep up in the air. And having the perspective of taking care of yourself and knowing what you want and being able to go through and prioritize yourself is the most important. As my friends will tell you, I've not always been the best at doing that, and I am still learning, just as everybody is constantly learning how to go through and prioritize themselves to be a better version of themselves and to take better care of themselves and others. And focusing on yourself, focusing on you as a person first, you as a scientist next, is the most important thing, and allowing yourself to just fully embody what you love and being able to take care of yourself so you can continue to do the amazing things that you are 100% capable of.
My advice is very similar to Jody's, and it is to just be resilient. I think there's a lot of times where, especially as women, you experience discouragement in these STEM fields. But if you find it interesting and you're passionate about it, just be resilient and keep doing what you're doing and not letting the negative or discouraging comments of maybe why as a girl are you interested in science. I can say I've definitely felt that sometimes, but that I knew this is what I wanted to do. And then specifically also, this is really important in a career of medical sales, because it is a very hard industry to get into. And it is also a predominantly male industry. So it's important to, if that's something that you want to pursue in the future, to just keep trying, and you will find a company or a different path that is going to be great for you.
Thank you. Thank you for those inspiring words. Very quickly, before we get to the Q&A, I just want to say thank you to the BIO5 staff and the public affairs team for hosting this great panel, for the food, for the setup, for everything. Thank you so much for what you've done. And thank you, Dr. Barton, for supporting the continuation of this very important event. And I will say thank you to the men out there in the audience that are supporting the wives, the girlfriends, the sisters, the mothers in their fields. And so thank you for everybody who is supporting the women that are remaining in STEM. Number to sign in if you're here in person, that would be fantastic. And so now we're going to get to questions. Do we have any questions in the audience for the panel? All right, and we'll have a mic come up.
Hello, can you hear me? Maybe? Okay, well, all right. So since we're at the BIO5, I love STEM education. I know Jordan loves STEM education. I love the Keys program. I was in Keys. And one of the biggest challenges I know for getting young kids up into STEM is that transition between high school and college. But one of the big limiting factors is home lives, especially for low-income families or families who are first-generation students, haven't had somebody having the college experience. How do we either support parents or support students that are trying to break into STEM but just can't because they don't have that background, they don't have those resources? Maybe they're the one that has to take care of their siblings at home. There are so many invisible barriers that they're trying to jump over back at that home life. How do we, as BIO5, as people in Keys, whatever we're doing, how do we help support those kids trying to break into STEM when they have so many things holding them back?
Do one of the parents want to go first? Oh, okay. As the science literacy educator, a lot of my job is making sure that students have the resources to be able to come here. Thankfully, the Keys program is generously funded by many, many donors that give to the program individually. And then also the BIO5 Institute covers about half the cost of the program as well. And that financial element, that providing that lack of a barrier, getting it over it by saying, don't even worry about it, here's a step ladder to get you over this fence, just hop down once you're over it, is one of the biggest things that helps out with those different areas. When I did the Keys program myself, my family made significantly less money than they currently do. We were hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical debt because my mom had been to the hospital. And so most of our money was going to other people. And I really wanted to do this program. I really wanted to experience what research was like. And I would not have been able to do that if we hadn't been able to provide financial aid to the students that we currently have and to the students in the past. So thinking about those barriers, and instead of going through and reacting to them and putting them in after you have discovered that, oh, this might be something that is preventing somebody from getting into the field, and preemptively thinking about it is one of the best ways to go through and care for students. So if students have had to be a caregiver for their family members, we have students that stay after class on Wednesdays who are allowed to just learn and spend time with us and work on their assignments there rather than sending them home like a traditional student might, because when they get home, they have to cook, they have to clean, they have to take care of their siblings. So they need the time dedicated to them to take care of that as well. We've thought of that ahead of time. We know that students might be struggling with mental health things, with other barriers that are caused by everything else being piled on top of them. So we have training on how to go through and take care of youth in crisis situations. We have experienced staff members that have either done educational counseling is I guess the best way to go through and describe it instead of professional, and who have experience with working with students that come from those different backgrounds as well. It's preparing the systems to preemptively think of those things as compared to saying, oh, wait, this was a barrier. I guess we got to go back to the drawing board and throw everything out and restart again.
I'll just add a little bit to that. One of the things that really attracted me to the BIO5 Institute at the University of Arizona when I was looking for faculty positions was the outreach that the BIO5 Institute does. Things like this, the KEYS program. It's so critical that there's accessibility to science. In this country, science literacy in the general population is horrible. It's really low. And this is where we get lots of problems like vaccine hesitancy and a distrust in science. And I think that's something that we can all play a part in. Like, don't just hide away your love for science. Go out there and share it with everybody you can find that'll listen. Go into schools. I mean, I did that. I think that's much harder today, but I did that constantly from the time I was a graduate student on. Would go spend an afternoon at a school meeting with all the biology classes and talking about science. There's a lot of ways to sort of to help people envision themselves as scientists and for them to understand that this is a path that would be open to them.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Hi, my name's Callista, and I recently just graduated from college from out of state, and I'm interested in pursuing a career as an obstetrician and gynecologist. One of the things I struggled with in college was imposter syndrome, feeling like I'm not smart enough to be there, feeling like I don't know if I can do it. Have you guys ever dealt with that? And if so, how do you manage those types of feelings?
I have the mic so I can start. I don't think there's a scientist on the planet or a physician or anybody working at a high level that hasn't had imposter syndrome. We all struggle with it, more or less. It can come and go. You can be at the height of like doing all kinds of amazing things, and you get hit with a bout of an imposter syndrome. And I think taking a little bit of the reality check is an important thing to do kind of on a daily basis, and take stock in the successes that you've had, but also allowing yourself to not be perfect. I think part of the problems that push us towards imposter syndrome is that we're setting impossibly high bars, and it's okay to make mistakes. I mean, I've reached the point in my career where I can really relish and absolutely find the most fun in being wrong. Because when my students can come to me and think of a better way to do something, or an experiment I haven't thought about, or many times an experiment that I told them probably wasn't a good idea or might not work, but you go ahead and try it, and they come back with an mind-blowing result that I wouldn't have foreseen. I mean, that means that I'm empowering other people to do things right. So I think if you just give yourself the grace to stumble and to get back up and to keep going, you generally you can defeat, I think, to some extent that negative voice in your head that's telling you you're an imposter, because we all have something to contribute, and we really can do our level best and make our place and contribution.
I can speak to what Felicia said, and I agree. Imposter syndrome is something that we all deal with. And I think as women, we deal with it more, especially when we feel the pushback from different groups that we're exposed to, and we're treated sometimes as second-class citizens. And as Felicia said, you know, you've got to persevere, and you do need to make mistakes. And as you grow in confidence, as you go in your career and you gain the experience, you will gain the confidence. It's hard at first. I found that imposter syndrome was worse when I was younger. As I've gotten older, I have more confidence in myself, and therefore I don't feel it so often. But that was a great question.
Any more questions here in the audience?
This is kind of like a weird question, but if you had to do this like all over again, like day one, what would you do differently?
Since I have the mic, I'll go ahead. What would I do different? I think I wouldn't have been as afraid. I think I would have gained my voice earlier in terms of dealing with others that were naysayers about what I was attempting to do. I would have been more confident in myself. So I think that's the thing you need to do is build confidence. Find a mentor too. Try to find a woman mentor, because she'll generally be older and wiser and can give you the help and the support that you need.
I'm going to call out Lindsey and make her say words.
I think that's a good question. I think just from being an undergraduate, I think we all have those, oh, what if I were to have picked this major or done something different? Because there's genuinely so many different choices at the University of Arizona. I think one thing I would have done differently is just exploring other majors. I mean, I'm very much someone who, once I commit to something, that is what I'm doing. So although I don't have any regrets of the major that I chose, I maybe would have just explored some of the other majors. I mean, I found out that there was a public health major when I was a sophomore, or just one of those other things. And it is kind of scary going in as a high school graduate, 18, 19, picking a field that you're going to do for the next 4 years. So just kind of exploring those options and really doing your research, I think is something I would have maybe done a little differently.
I'll just say ditto so much, but I think giving yourself, is that the confidence that you can see in hindsight. But I remember so acutely when things got hard that it just felt impossible. And no struggle lasts forever. They're all temporary. And so having that hindsight to kind of understand that better up front would have helped me derail less. But, I have very few regrets in science, and I really wouldn't change a thing. It has been so rewarding.
Thank you. Amy, what about any online questions?
Yes, we do. I think this one might be for Lindsey. What does it mean to be included in STEM as a psychology BA student, Bachelor of Arts student?
So I didn't necessarily study psychology, but it is a major that falls under the College of Science, which is what I was a part of. I think something that is unique to a lot of science majors is that there is truly a lot of support. So just feeling that inclusiveness of not only from your advisors at the university, or just that there's a huge science community at the University of Arizona. We prioritize research. We're very high in innovation. So I think that when you choose to pursue a BA in psychology or neuroscience or biology or something of that science field, I think you are given a lot of support and you feel a little bit more included. That's what I would say from my experience.
Thank you, Lindsey. We don't have any other questions online.
So for Lindsay in specific, I'm an incoming undergraduate for neurosci and cog sci. So what was one of the things that you wish you would have known going into the major?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think on that. I think one thing I kind of touched on earlier is that there are two different tracks of the major. So like I mentioned, you graduate with the same degree. It's called neuroscience and cognitive science. But kind of if you're more looking to be more pre-med, you would be on the neuroscience track. And if you're looking to do some cognitive science, which is a lot more psychology based, and still really interesting, and the major has a really great curriculum of what you need to take in order to graduate with that degree. So you're exposed to both neuroscience and cognitive science, no matter which track you pick. So I think something that I would have liked to know earlier on is that I had that option of just immediately starting as a cog sci, because as I mentioned, I wanted to go to medical school. So I was on the neuroscience track. So I took some classes that I wouldn't have actually needed for the cog sci track, although they were still interesting. You know, those were those science pre-med classes, which I think are still important and actually are going to be really important in my current career field. But I think that is something that I would have liked to know, is that there's two different tracks.
All right, I think our last question will go right here, and then we'll head into our networking session.
Hi, I was just wondering if any of you have any experience with people who maybe got their undergrad online and then went to grad school after in person. I'm like double the age of most of the undergrad students, coming back as a mom, change of major, and I worry a lot that I'll be at a disadvantage compared to my other peers, just because I have been able to take some of my lab sciences locally at my community college, but I don't have the connections with the university instructors that a lot of the other students do, because they're not super involved online. They just kind of come, grade stuff, and that's it. Do you have experience with maybe people who did any of their work online, and do you feel like they're deficient in any areas, or do you feel that they still have the drive and they can catch up and they can be competitive in their fields?
I was an undergrad during the pandemic. So for 2 years, I was just completely online during that time. And I definitely feel that struggle of I didn't connect with my professors. I didn't know who my MCB 305 director was. I didn't know who one of my professors, Dr. Samantha Orchard, I think she would have been a fantastic mentor. And I wish that I had gotten to spend any amount of time with her outside of that fully online class. I saw her every day in the video lectures that she would post online, and she would leave comments on my grades and all that. But it very much felt like I didn't have that connection with her that I had with maybe somebody like my research faculty member, Dr. Molly Bolger, who I was able to go and see in person, even though our first year was kind of more virtual, more doing it over Zoom. And all that I would say is that the thing that helped me connect, even when I was in that virtual and online space, is send out an email to that mentor, send out an email to that person, mention that you've taken their class before, and then just ask to meet. If you're comfortable meeting with them in person, ask to meet with them in person, or ask to meet with them over a virtual setting, and just talk with them about the class, talk with them about what your goals are, and ask for help in those areas as well. It's absolutely terrifying to do that. I absolutely hated doing that with Dr. Bolger when I was asking to be in her lab in the height of the pandemic. I'd moved home because I couldn't stay at the dorms anymore and act as an RA. But taking those chances and asking for those things, as scary as it is the thing that helped me to be able to reconnect with people once I started to become in person again, and once I felt comfortable putting myself in situations where I might get COVID once again. But this is all from like somebody who kind of got to experience some college, so I apologize if it's not directly applicable.
Here's that. I don't have any experience specifically with what you're asking, but having been in science for a long time now, 30 years, and trained a lot of different people for this career, there's no such thing as too late, and there's no such thing as the one path. And I think a lot of people find their way to science in very different ways. And the diversity of that experience is really important. Never discount maturity in coming to science, but so much of science is a self-taught, endeavor where you're really taking the initiative to build the background you need or to backfill any deficiencies that exist. We all have them no matter what path we took, and things that we have to really work to learn. And so it can be done, and I wouldn't be discouraged by any particular path.
Thank you. So thank you again, everybody, for attending this great event. Thank you, and panelists, to Courtney for the great keynote. And now we will continue with our networking session for those here. Lindsey will stay online for anybody that might want to connect virtually that way. Have a great and safe Saturday, and thank you again for supporting the BIO5. Thank you.